Morning guys, remap day for me, exciting. I'm off to GAD Tuning in Essex, Southend-on-Sea, as I did a bit of looking around, and they do custom maps per car instead of model-specific generic maps like a lot of the other companies do, so that seemed like a good option. It's more expensive, obviously. It's about double the price of a lot of the other ones. Well, in my experience anyway, what I've looked at seems probably worth it. To be fair, I did on my old car. It was a 535 diesel F10. I got Celtic Tuning to do remap on that. We just come to the house and just plug it in and mess around with it. And that was great, I have to say. Like, the torque on that thing was amazing. It's actually more than what I get on the e63. So I can't really specifically fault that, but at the same time, I have heard that it's better to do a specific one for your own car. Kind of makes sense, I guess, instead of just, you know, whatever they've seen on different cars. Plus, I get baseline rolling road and then the actual numbers from after the remap. So I'm hoping for sort of 660 plus horsepower and something around 800 pound-foot of torque or something. So let's go find out. Hey guys, just arrived at GAD Tuning after a couple of hours drive. Just thought it was worth mentioning that I've done an air filter change on this. Got K&N air filters in, which you can see a how-to guide. If you look at my channel, there's like one other video on there, so you'll find it. The guys here said that you know, kind of shrugged their shoulders a little bit, but said it was definitely better than the OEM ones. So we shall see what happens. Hey guys, so obviously I'm not in the car anymore. This is about a week after I've got the map done. Just going to talk about a few things with it really. Firstly, I was expecting somewhere in the line of 660 crank horsepower and what did they say, 1100 Newton meters or something like that. So Anthony at GAD, he did this baseline runs and did the map and everything, and then he came to talk to me afterwards, and his first words were, this is a powerful one. He reckoned that it was the strongest e63 that he'd come across. Normally they come in, he reckons, at around sort of 510 to 520 horsepower crank on his dyno, which is, as he calls it, it's a heartbreaker, because it's, I don't know, tough, whatever. It doesn't inflate numbers. Mine came in at 560, and there's a small percentage difference there. I think he said the corrected figure was like 545, which he said is just very good for those on his dyno. But the upshot is that the big number at the end of the day was 713 horsepower and 1131 Newton meters of torque, which equates to like 830 pounds of torque, which is just nuts. It's just so much power, it's unreal. And you know, these, as I spoke a lot to Anthony on the day, and it's really interesting hearing about the different kind of dynos that you have, UK versus US dynos, and how they measure power differently, and the different calculations that people use to come up with the different crank horsepower figures. All these dynos, they make an adjustment depending upon environmental factors like the humidity levels, and it depends how much you've got the car strapped down and all this kind of stuff. And with a lot of dynos, apparently you can change these things quite easily, because the sensors are they're open to manipulation. So if you've got a sensor, you can just literally wrap your hand around it and it will increase the temperature, or you can put it in a cup of ice and decrease the temperature, and from one reading to the next you can change the car's horsepower by like 50 horsepower just through manipulating the sensors. Whereas the one at GAD Tuning, you can't do any of that. It's all locked. All these settings are locked in, and also importantly, the percentage adjustment for wheel horsepower to crank horsepower is also locked in. So for my car, the equation that they have is they equate a 15% drivetrain loss. So if you take the numbers that we have on the graph that I'm looking at, which I'll put up in a minute so you guys can see it, is uncorrected. It was 623.9 wheel horsepower, and I think corrected it's like 600 and I can't remember, I did the sums, it's like 610 or something like that. So if you add on 15% to that, you come up with the number of 713. Other companies in the UK, big companies, use different numbers. They use one particular one. I'm not getting into names and things like that, but one particular one uses, I think, 18.5%. So where my car on Anthony's dyno comes up with 713 horsepower, the same car on a different dyno, a different equation, 18.5% would come out at 735 horsepower instead. So, you know, you see a lot of numbers for these cars, 720, 750, whatever, and I don't know. I don't know if it's all the same or if it's different or if whatever people have. From what I've seen and what I understand now, the readings from Anthony's dyno seem pretty legitimate, especially since it had a really good baseline level, which seemed to reflect pretty accurately the numbers of what the manufacturer's stating. But anyway, bottom line, the tune on the car has made a huge difference. Like it's made the car, in my opinion, how it should be, sort of from factory. You hear these numbers and you assume it's going to be undrivable, especially because it's rear wheel drive and it's going to be ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, it could be easier in certain circumstances. And I think that the limited slip diff will definitely help with some of those things. But ultimately, like the car, it handles the power really well. Yeah, I mean, the mid-range torque from sort of 2,500 to 4,000 RPM it's almost doubled from what it was before. So you have what I was mentioning before was versus my old 535 diesel, where you got so much torque on that with the remap. It's like, well, the numbers are irrelevant. It was a lot. And now this feels much, you get that real big diesel kind of surge from the torque, which I was missing before because you kind of had to wait for the turbos to spool up before you were getting that kind of action. And now it's amazing, and the actually peak power comes in at about 5,000 RPM. So, I mean, the car will rev out to like 6,500 or something like that, but you're dropping off a lot of power after that. So yeah, that 700 and whatever horsepower is right around 5,000 RPM. Peak torque is at 4,500. So right around that middle of the rev range, you're getting all the power and all the torque. And it's pretty phenomenal. I love it. I just, after I was driving it back from Essex, like I couldn't stop smiling, to be honest. It's just pretty crazy. What can I say? I recommend it highly. Get it done. I'd really recommend GAD to do it because it seems like they're pretty much on the line, on the straight and narrow. It could be all nonsense. Like, I don't know. I'm talking to one guy about one thing, but he seems a very genuine chap. Nice guy, good to talk to. Obviously knows what he's talking about. And like I said before, they do custom maps for each car that come in. So it's not just, you know, if you go online and you look up, if you get a tuning box or a super chip or whatever, it's literally just a map that's made for that model of that car. It's got nothing to do with your individual car. So it might, you know, it will definitely perform better on some than on others. But what they do here is they do it from scratch for every car. So it's definitely better on that front and worth, in my opinion, worth the extra money. So yeah, like, you know, I hope, I'd love Anthony to pay me some money for saying all this stuff. It's clearly not going to, but I rate them highly, and it's great. And if I get another car that wants remap, then I'll take it back there. But I can't see any reason that I'll ever get rid of this, to be honest. Like, I can't find it. I can't imagine anything quicker. I did look up some numbers as to the brake horsepower per ton, where this sits, like amongst other cars and shit like that. It's probably irrelevant because it's probably meaningless. Although I don't know if it is or not. But I'll put up what I've seen. The cars that it now has the same horsepower per ton, and bear in mind with those, the torque per ton on mine will be substantially more, because 835 pound-foot of torque per ton, pound-foot of torque is just a silly number, really. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Cheers.